Today is the fifth Sunday in the Lenten season, right? That means after today, someone always seems to light this candle. After today, we will have Palm Sunday, which is next week, which is going to, the choir is going to be doing their cantata. And then, well, of course, we'll have the Easter celebration that will tie everything together. And we've been talking a lot through this letter to the Ephesians, which is a text to larger churches, kind of a circulation type letter to a general area that was kind of struggling a little bit with trying to create a place of unity for those who are extremely different, one from the other, from the different groups. And so at this point in our text, in the fourth chapter, we have Paul who is begging. He is begging the church to kind of to really begin to understand and see what it is he's been trying to tell them through this message of Christianity. You know, trying to beg them. So if you just understood, if you really understood the vast potential you have as God's children, you would be coming together. You wouldn't be offering up negativity. You wouldn't be fighting and battling with each other. You would be coming together as a body because you have so much potential as a people. And so he is begging them to set aside their differences and stop using that as a reason to be divided, but to use that, to see their differences as a real gift, a great gift from God, who has given us such great ability to build each other up and also to use each other's gifts to make this gospel message something very profound that the world is hungry for, and they need to understand it and grasp it for themselves. So in this church, you have basically two groups of people. You can lump them into two groups. You have one group who are former Jews. They have a long history of their faith, and they know how it works, and they've been working it for a long, long time. They have long standing within the church. So they've been around for a while. Do we have any of those types in the congregation today? That's probably the majority of us, right? So Paul's message to that group could be our message. And throughout this letter, he talks to these folks. He tells them to be receptive. Be receptive to those who do not share your history. Be receptive. Invest your lives. Teach these people the love that you have for God, and tell them why this love, this relationship is far more important than anything you can possibly do with your life. Be excited that people are striving to understand God in their life and respond to them. And then you have the second group of people, kind of like the Gentiles. They were the Gentiles. They were the ones who don't have a history of church. They were the unchurched. The Greek word for that is knucklehead. Right. We're knuckleheads. Right. No, that's not true. Don't take me for that. But that's another way of saying that. There are those whose life have been just crazy, and now they're starting to come into the life of the church to receive what it is that people found to be very beneficial to them. And so it's also a message to this group of people to take advantage of those who have long standing of the church. Listen to what they have to say. Be willing to be taught. Be willing to be trained. Be willing to be mentored into the faith. But the most important thing he is trying to have them to understand, that he spends most of this book talking about, is get rid of those images of who you think you are, that you might have received from your other life, you might receive from your work, from other people in the world who tend to be negative around you. Do not view yourself the way that the world views you. Instead, you need to view yourself the way that God sees you. Completely different. And so he spends at least the half of the book talking about who they are, who God sees them to be. So in the first part, he begins this way. He talks about, you need to understand that you are blessed. You need to understand that you have been chosen by God to do special tasks in this world, to do great things with your life. Not in the business world, not in the community world, but to do great things with your life in the way it relates to other people and helping them in the greatest times of need. You have a past. But let me tell you this, you are blameless. You are redeemed. You have been forgiven. You've also been adopted into the very family of God, and through that adoption, you have been given grace. God has chosen to love you like you have never felt love before. And that love will never leave you. No matter what you do, no matter what you have done, no matter what you will do, that love continues to be with you. And not only that, that you have the ability through your constant understanding of who God is in your life to really begin to understand God's will for the world, God's will for your life, God's will for the life of this congregation. But also you get the other opportunity to play a part in that will, to participate with God in building something as great as God's kingdom. And this just isn't Paul blowing smoke. This is what he says that God has promised to each and every one who choose to be in a relationship. And not only that, it's been sealed. Sealed by a loving God. And so Paul is reaching this point where he is begging for both groups of people in this church to commit to growing in their understanding. To focus not on yourself or what you want or what you think you want, but focus on the purpose of the church. Focus on the vision that God has for your life. Focus on the vision that God has for this community. Focus on the mission that we have been placed before us to make life better for this community of people. Because we live in a world of people who need the very love and hope in their lives that God can offer. And so here we read in the 4th chapter. He says these words. Therefore, I, a prisoner of the Lord. Can you tell where he is right now? Pretty simple, isn't it? He's in jail. I, the prisoner of the Lord, I beg you to lead a life that is worthy of the calling to which you have been called. Shake and wake up, people. And so with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace. Because there's only one body. There's only one Spirit. You have been called to one hope of our calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God, one Father of us all, who is above all and through all and in all. But each of us have been given grace according to the measure of Christ's gifts. To the gifts we give were that some would be apostles, that some would be prophets, some would be evangelists and pastors and teachers. And the purpose of pulling all this together is to what? Equip the saints for the works of ministry. Who are the saints? Come on, people. You're the saints. Who gets equipped for ministry? We do. Who has a job description? Yeah, y'all do too, right? Yeah. My granddad taught me this. Be careful who you point at, right? Because you got 3 more pointing right back at you. So we start saying, well, they need to do this. We got 3 more to remind us. We have a job description too. And our role, our responsibility is to be equipped to do great things with our lives in the community. That we also have a ministry, and that is a part of who we are in what we do. So, once we do this, this is for the building up of the body of Christ, until all of us come to the unity of faith and the knowledge of the Son of God, to maturity, to the measure of the full stature of Christ. So what Paul is saying a lot through this letter is that there's one way you can accomplish unity. One way. Any idea? Find your gifts, focus on your ministry, and use it. There's not a greater way to bring people together in order to accomplish something. If we stop and start focusing on other people or what's going on around us, or things we like or don't like or have opinions on, Then we have disunity. If we find out why God has created us, uncover those gifts, and we use that for ministry, then we're all moving in the same direction. Let's talk more about that. Let's pray. We come from all different walks of life, oh God, with many stresses and family histories. We have the things in our lives, the people in our lives that cause us a lot of stress, a lot of frustration. But we gather here in this people because that's not who we are. We've come to hear who we are. We've come to understand your love for our lives. We have come to be embraced by your grace, to be reminded of who we are and to whom we belong, and to find ourselves wrapped up in you, that we may find our life and use it when we leave this place. So melt our hearts, loosen up our minds, that your Spirit may roam free within us, that we may be claimed as your children and believe it. Amen. Well, my favorite topics to talk about is not sports. I'm growing up. It's my mother. We haven't talked about my mom in a long time. I'll give you an update on my mom. My mom is, there's when we were in seminary, we always had people in our lives. This is what ministers do. We get together and we talk about our favorite sermon illustration. Who's that person in your life? Who's your favorite sermon illustration? We all have those people in our lives, right? We go, ooh, that's a sermon illustration waiting to happen. So we all have people that really help us understand our faith. And some have been positive influences, and some have taught us how to be positive influences, right? And so my mother was one of those people who influenced my life profoundly because of the struggles that we went through. My mom is living with my sister in Austin, in the Austin area. I guess that's a huge area now, and is doing very well. Her health is up and down, and she gets a lot of procedures every now and then just to kind of get her going in another direction for a few months before the next procedure. And so she lives with Susan. They are two peas in a pod. They're always a blast to go and visit for 30 minutes, and then you just kind of move on, right? And I know that's not laughter from you, that's release from you, right? Because oh, good, I'm not the only one. And so she's that way. She is a pretty funny lady. But a lot of my bitterness that you've heard over the course of 20 some odd years has a lot of come from our relationship. I was somebody who was in our family that was completely neglected. And so a lot of that stuff when you're young, you kind of take to heart, right? You start to wonder, what's wrong with me? Now don't answer that question. That's something I'm thinking to myself. All right? What's wrong with me? Why am I not worth her attention? And my dad was in this too. But my dad rectified our relationship many years ago. But mom, she just never would. And so there's this stuff that we carry with us that kind of causes us to act a certain way around each other or in the community, and we don't want that to define us. So mother was one of these folks. And I remember being with my aunt, her oldest sister, and we were having a conversation after another one of my mom's. Anyway, another one of those things that she went through. And so we're trying to figure this thing out, and my aunt was a professor at UTA, very sharp lady, and she just flat out told me straight up, Danny, let me tell you about your mother. And this is very candid, right? This isn't a negativity toward her. This is just the reality. Your mother does not have an IIQ. She is not a smart person. But she has this amazing ability to make poor choices. Man, spot on, you know? And that's just kind of how life was. And when she said that, it was like a light went on. And it said, you know, hey, knucklehead, maybe it's not you. Maybe the reason that she was the way that she was really had nothing to do with you or who you are as a person or what's wrong with you as a person. She has limitations. She did the best that she possibly could do with what she was given. She did what she thought was right, and for me, that just didn't add up. And so it took a lot of pressure off of me to think that there was something wrong with me. I am broken. I am not worthy of love. And then you accompany that when I was later years in high school, when I started going to church and was introduced to this personal relationship with Jesus. I never liked that language. It's kind of weird. But really, it's really understanding who this person is in Jesus. And then having to experience who that person was really took place and formed and shaped me and impacted my life the first time I went to church camp. Because let me tell you, I was not a person that you'd want your kids to hang out with in high school. But when I went to that camp, my gosh, I was loved. I was a rock star. I was accepted. And I struggled with that. I was like, why are these people so kind to me? And not just the first day they met me, but it went on all week. It impacted me so much. It was so profound that I did not want to let it go. I did not want to leave and go back to that house where it was just the opposite. But it was so profound, so amazing, I did not want to let it go. It just made me want to look more and more and more into what this God is about. It was everything that Paul had talked about in the first part of his lesson. And that was so amazing to me because I've never felt that before until I went to the church. And not only that, that's when I really wanted other people to feel or to experience this kind of love to the growing community of people who do not. Okay, enough sappy stuff. Let's go back to Mom. Y'all would like my mother. She's a fun person. She's really great with people. Great conversation. She's funny. She's witty. Great conversationalist. She says, and the reason Shannon likes her so much, she says whatever enters her mind. If it's there, by golly, it's coming out, right? She has absolutely no filter at all. And I know what you're thinking. Yeah, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, right? But that's true about her. You know what? And all those qualities made her probably one of the best bartenders you could ever find. And she was. She was a great bartender. She would make everybody feel at ease. Everyone had a conversation with her, and she would stay with them and engage with them all the time. No filter. In fact, that's where I spend most of my life being raised, was in a bar. Biker bar. Yeah. Fun people, though. Great stories. But let's think about that. Outside of the bar tending job, she didn't work too well. Let me tell you why. My mom always needed to work in order to survive. She knew that. And so she also understood the value not only of a job, but the value of a job interview. She was very good at interviewing for jobs. She was nice. She was very pleasant. She was polite. She was charming. She was willing to do whatever she needed to do in order to get that job. She made a great employee. And the reason she made a great employee is because once she got that job, she would invest everything in her life into that company. To a fault. She was so good at that that it only would take her 2 months, people, for her to promote herself to owner of that company. Just 2 months is all she needed, right? And she gave herself permission to do all these executive decisions without the need of those executives. And it always got her in trouble, like nobody's business. I got a call one time from my older brother who was having a little party at his house. And so he went to the grocery store. Mom was working. She was at the counter checking out. Here comes David walking in with his cart. And she starts taking the groceries out. Don't worry about that scanner thing. Just start popping them in bags, put them back in the cart. Said, see you later. And he's going home thinking, I think I just stole some groceries. I mean, we're talking hundreds of dollars of groceries. And so he's calling me up kind of going, what did I do? I feel bad. Mom did this and Mom did that, and she didn't want me to pay for them. What do I do? I mean, what else can you do but have a good party? Earlier in my life. But I called my mom and I said, Mom, what are you thinking? What are you doing here? You can't do that. That's not your role. That's not your job to do that. She goes, well, Danny, it's not that big a deal. They can afford it. Great. Fantastic. She can afford it. Mom had a tendency to forget she wasn't the owner. She was just an employee. She had a tendency to forget that it wasn't her job, her role, to do things for other people in the manner that she wants them done. And no matter how many times I would tell her, Mom, you're not the owner. You're not the owner of me, for that matter. You are the employer. You have to understand who you are. And I say this because when I think about what Paul is dealing with in these churches, it's kind of the same concept. It's the same attitude that's kind of built its way into the churches that Paul was trying to write about. The people were beginning to forget who they were. They were beginning to forget their role within the life of the church. They were forgetting the purpose. And they began to promote themselves to owners, making decisions for God. And so Paul, for most of this letter, has to remind them, that's not your job. We already have a God. And it's not who God designed you to be. It's not what God created you to be. And so he has to remind them over and over and over and over again who they were. They were a gift from God. They were not God. They have been chosen by God to do great things with their lives in order to help other people in their lives who need that love. And they also have the ability to understand God through all of their times together with God and with one another, to help people from where they were to where God needs them to be. Paul was begging these people. He was begging them to remember who they were, to discover those special gifts, those 3 gifts that God has given you to make you special, and to focus your attention on using those gifts in the will that God has given to us, to be revealed to us in the church and in the community. The last words that Jesus spoke in the Gospel of Matthew, the very last words that he shared to the faith community, was to tell them our role in the world in this relationship. And he tells them, folks, you need to go out into the world. You need to go out into the world. Don't let this wait around for the world to come to you. You need to go to the world and you need to make disciples. Not church members. You need to make disciples of people. You need to reach out to people and you need to begin the process of teaching them the very teachings of Jesus Christ. You need to go out and be very intentional about teaching people who this Jesus is, and then help them become a part of God's family. That's our role. That's our responsibility. And this is what a group of people in our church, our outreach team, are trying to do. That they are gathering together and creating ways of which we can reach out to a world of people and bring them here and help them understand this love, this gift that God has given them. That's why we're doing this Palm Sunday festival. It's for us to go out and to reach people and bring them in a non-threatening environment and help them come to worship with us and hear what the choir has to do with this cantata, and then begin the festivities and the fun and the fellowship afterwards, in a way that we can sit and talk and we can visit and bring people in and talk with them and understand their issues or understand where they need to be in life. It's a great way to reach out. It's a great way to talk to new people. It's a great way to invite people who might be timid about just coming into any worship service. But to a festival, that's different. To worship and then a festival, that's even better. Because reaching out is what we do. Reaching out is who we are called to be. And if there's one thing that we need to work on personally, is how to be more inviting to people. And that's what this gives us opportunities to do, is to invite people who are not here. We all have family, right? Pretty sure. Kids, grandkids. We all have friends at school. We have friends at work. We have neighbors. We have acquaintances that we meet and see all the time who may not even have a place where they can go and worship. Why not invite them to come be a part of this and kind of see where it goes? Introduce them to something that might be very powerful. Because when it comes down to what Paul is trying to tell the church, is that this is our job. This is our role. This is our focus. This is our responsibility, is to grow up in our faith, to allow this words of Jesus to transform our lives and be transformed by God's grace and goodness, so that we can in turn share that great message with those who are lost, which now outnumbers us 9-1. We have been created individually with a purpose in mind. And the church has gathered people with purpose in mind to fulfill a ministry that Christ had destined all of us to come together to work toward. So let us find our place. Let us focus on our mission, our purpose, the vision that God placed before us. And let's get it done. Let's pray.